Welcome to Oops, I Talk Politics, a new left-wing political podcast featuring me, Sly.
And me, Ryan.
And me, Phil.
And me, Daryl.
And me, Tarzan, Eugene.
I knew you were going to make
I knew it too, you
joke.
fucker.
So this podcast is about bad Tarzan jokes. No, it's about...
Wait, no. How would you do a podcast about bad Tarzan jokes?
You just say me, Tarzan, you Jane every time.
Okay.
Then you end it. Well, I've been
yeah,
Tarzan.
I've been Jane. But, so this premise of this podcast is we have conversations and we make it about politics every time, which is what we do in real life.
Yeah.
And this week we're going to be talking about Hamilton, the apolitical musical that we're making about politics.
Yeah, what a stretch.
Yeah, it's not like, he's a political figure and the whole thing's about politics.
Can we get back to politics, please?
Let's go back.
That's a Hamilton reference, guys.
Yeah, so first, before we get into the political aspect of it, let's talk about what our thoughts are on the musical in general.
Well, what if a listener hasn't heard of Hamilton?
Well...
That's a joke. Nobody hasn't heard of Hamilton.
That's not true.
Typical liberal, assuming everyone can...
Typical New York elite liberal.
Well, Hamilton is a musical, hip-hop, multicultural musical, where a bunch of multicultural individuals rap about Hamilton, one of our founding fathers, and about his life.
Yeah, and it's been on Broadway for, I think, 2 years.
So Ryan is the biggest fan. I think you should talk about your thoughts on it.
Well, I'm not a huge hip-hop fan, and I can't stand most musicals, but I really love Hamilton. I don't know. Maybe it's the politics. Maybe I just think the music's better than any other musical I've ever heard.
The music's great.
Music's
Yeah.
great.
And I'm a big fan. And I came to it because I know Lin-Manuel Miranda from, not personally, but
He's my best friend.
when he guested on some of my favorite comedy podcasts, and I was like, I'll check this thing out that everyone's talking about. And then I listened to it once, and I was like, shit, I wish I bought tickets when no one was talking about it.
People make podcasts and make bad things.
I really like the way, and this might just be stuff that every musical does that I'm just, I don't know anything about musicals really, but I really like the way they infuse the musical themes throughout the whole thing, and I think that the way the lyrics are structured is just really, really interesting, and I love how it doesn't steer away from politics, because a lot of pop culture doesn't lean into it, where they're like, oh, it's a metaphor, you get it? Like, Biff is kind of based on Donald Trump and stuff like that, but I really like that they're like, no, we're going to be very explicit about it, we're going to give a lot of specific politics from the era, and we're going to really go into more detail than I would really ever expect a Broadway musical to go into about the actual political issues of the revolution, and I just think it's fascinating.
It's like, my beef actually is the opposite, that it's not as explicit as it might have been, but there are forces outside of the musical that might have prevented it from reaching its full potential, I guess. But
you also need to be able to listen to it, and as a regular person, not knowing about the politics of the late 18th century, and pick it up, which it does well.
I find it, even though, of course I would like more, I think that the way they infuse his personal character story with the politics, and I think it leans harder into it than it has to. I think his life was interesting enough without having to go into, his rivalry between, the Democratic Republicans at the time, and I think that I want more.
More.
But I think that they do more than expected, and I feel like it gives you more knowledge about politics than most other pop culture things would.
Phil, as the resident history buff, what are your thoughts on Hamilton?
I liked it. I've only listened... not again, I didn't say it on this podcast. I've only listened to it once.
As you all know, this is a movie script. As you all know, I love Hamilton.
Yeah. So I listened to it once, and I was doing other stuff, so I'm not super familiar with it. I enjoyed it when I listened to it, and I as they were referencing things throughout the musical, I liked it a lot. I mean, parts of it, like you were saying, go away from the politics, they're just talking about him and his relationships and that stuff. For me, I'm like, it's cool to get his personal story, but I was more interested in the political side. But honestly, hearing a very popular musical about, U.S. government and politics was just exciting to me. in
You're our
general.
founding fathers.
Yeah, I was like, this is on that premise alone, it is cool.
And that's infused with so much rap. I thought that was really neat.
What are your thoughts, Daryl?
Oh, I liked it. That's about as... I mean, I think you guys summed it up nicely. There's some things that could have gone more in depth with, but I think it's really great. Just that it being so popular, I think, is a nice thing.
Yeah,
I came to it like after the wave of popularity. Like I got it like after it was #1 on the charts and all that stuff.
So you're after. I liked it after. It was past. It was cool.
I guess, yeah. But I was expecting it to be way more watered down than it was. Because I guess that's my hipster side showing. But usually when things are that popular, I don't expect them to be like that unique.
and
Yeah.
isn't it just cool to have like teenagers talking about the Democratic, Republicans, and Federalists? Like for me, that is.
Yeah, like I think that's awesome. But what about you, Sly?
I'm half on your guys' side, and I probably overall would agree with you. But I do want to play a bit of devil's advocate, and maybe you guys can sway me, or at least articulate the counterpoints to me better. But I'm going to read this article by Current Affairs. Let me pull it up because I have to find out the author's
I'm
name.
going to read this whole article to you.
No, wait, can we just point out, none of us have actually seen it, right?
Right.
We've just listened to it.
Ryan said you've read the article before, and you
I read it when it first came out, and I was just like, this is the most fucking pretentious think piece I've
I read it
all
today.
year.
I didn't read it. Tell me about it.
Well, we're this podcast is a pretentious think piece, so
I know, and I'm rolling my eyes at us too, but it's audio only, so you can't tell.
the article opens up it makes an aesthetic argument, which is not really worth getting into, but I find it kind of amusing, where it compares it to a pirate rap group from America's Got Talent, and how this is just as Hamilton's just as corny as that. A bunch of white guys rapping about pirates is just as corny as a bunch of guys rapping about the founding fathers.
Oh, I mean, it's fucking corny. I'm not going to deny that.
And they compare it to an 8th grade play, and like, why is this liked if you did this in 8th grade, people think you're a fucking dork. Which is
Yeah, other 8th graders would. Who gives a shit about an 8th grader's opinion? No, really.
To be fair, 8th graders are assholes.
Yeah, I mean,
Come on,
Well,
guys.
it does raise a good point about how it's this is basically nerdcore music. Where Ryan said, like, I don't listen to rap, but I like this rap. And that's like saying, like, I don't listen to rock, but I like Schoolhouse Rock because it's educational and stuff. And so we're the whitest fucking dorks at the moment, just to point that out.
But, I mean, there's nothing inherently wrong with that.
I know, but that's the perspective we're coming from.
no one's saying this is representative of hip hop.
I know, but that's the perspective we're coming at. So when people argue that this is shit hip-hop, we can't really argue with that. I'm just pointing that out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not at all an expert on hip-hop, but, like, they do sample a lot of, like, Biggie and stuff in there.
Yeah, that's true. And I
But like I don't know anything about hip hop, so like yeah, we are a bunch of white liberals being like, oh, but it's so groundbreaking. Like I recognize that.
How ethnic.
I'm the biggest hip hop fan out of us.
Yeah, it's saying something.
And I'm a Polish guy. By the way, apparently it's a stereotype that if you're Polish, you're into rap. Did you ever hear about that, guys?
I have never heard
I've
that
never heard
or
that
any
before.
stereotypes about Polish people at all.
Are you just making things up about your own people?
No, I went to work. I went to work, and my coworker found out I was Polish, and he's like, "Oh, you must really like hip hop." And I'm like, "I actually do." How? And he's like, "Oh yeah, all the Polish guys fucking love hip hop." And
Have
the
you
reason,
heard that other than from this one guy?
no, but all the men in my family, they fucking love hip hop. Like it's just like
It might have just reached Poland.
No, I think it's just like
spread.
Polish guys love the fucking hip, thug, kind of badass guys with shirts, big muscles showing off.
Guys with shirts?
Guys without shirts.
That's all music.
Guys without shirts showing off their muscles,
Yeah.
acting tough. But
Yeah.
I actually do like Kendrick Lamar, Busta Rhymes, Ludacris. But
Run the jewels.
Yeah, they're good.
yeah, I like rap, but the thing is, I also like nerdcore music. So if there's like a stigma against nerdcore, I'm in that part of that stigma, so I can't really argue against it. I like fucking epic rap battles of history and shit like that, and I like that kind of crap. So
I literally play like cheesy history raps in class. Like I don't give a shit. It's not you're not saying like I'm gonna be as like I'm changing hip hop by playing this. It's like it's cool in a corny way to have some genre that people are really into for different reasons incorporate more academic things. I think.
I also think we have to judge it if you're gonna judge it as hip hop, I think you also have to judge it as a musical, and it is way. I mean, I'm gonna sound like an old fucking dad, but the music is way cooler than the majority of Broadway.
Yeah, I think Broadway's a fucking dorky white ass.
Yeah, but that's the thing is like Broadway is already so like dweeby and like polished that having it be, even though it's not nearly as raw and unfiltered as like any other hip hop, it's a significant step in that direction from any other Broadway play that I know
Yeah.
of.
So moving aside from aesthetics, let's get into the idea that basically the idea that this is blackwashing. Which the article brings up.
What?
Basically, that Hamilton, all these other guys, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, they're all slave owners, but now it's black people playing them. So now it's okay for white people to like it.
To like slavery?
To like basically put up a nice face, like now it's okay to be multicultural and love the founding fathers because they're being played with black people. So like it makes white people feel better that now black people are embracing white culture.
That sounds so dumb to me because white people already like the founding fathers. Every time you watch,
It's not like liberals can like the founding fathers.
It's like how basically now white audiences are happy that black people they like Hamilton because it's black people showing their appreciation for the founding fathers. Basically, it's black people showing their appreciation for what white people really like.
For the record, Hamilton wasn't white; he was Caribbean.
That's yes,
But
but the Washington and these slave owners. Well, we're slave owners.
I understand that, but I agree with that sentiment for Washington because it's not talked about at all. But they bring up Jefferson's slavery quite a few times, and I know that it's a demo and it's not actually in the play, but it's released on the Hamilton mixtape. There's a whole third cabinet battle about slavery, and John Lawrence, and like throughout Act 1, John Lawrence talks about slavery and abolitionism.
abolition.
Okay, yeah.
Abolition.
Iblis trigger.
And it is frequently referenced that Jefferson has slaves and he's trying to give, he wrote the Declaration of Independence, but there's a big hypocrisy there because he's a slave owner. And I do think that is part of the narrative. Is it done as much as it should? Maybe not. But it's not totally, what's the term used? Blackwashed?
Yeah, well, it's not a unfair term because I think we can use blackwashing in terms of like Ben Carson is blackwashing. They get black people to come out and say, yeah, like Ben Carson comes out and says,
I'm not saying it's not a thing that
think
exists.
Black people aren't that smart as white people.
Another way to look at this is that it's really cool that they can have black people and Latinos on stage acting as the founding fathers who clearly weren't those minorities. That's why I was like, this is really cool that they do this, and the fact that the article spins it in a negative light is really kind of that's that bizarre, far-stretching, like you're really looking for problems when you're including a diverse cast into your play.
The point they bring up is that there were obviously black people in those times, but there's no slave actual characters in the story, and all it is black people playing white people. There's no actual black people used as part of it.
Because it focuses on the founding fathers.
But which own slaves.
This isn't Hamilton and all the slaves they own.
It's like my plantation economy.
No, Hamilton's wife owned slaves. He was in charge of controlling her slaves. Like he owned slaves in a sense himself. So they will be in the background, but the story completely missing entirely.
But then where the story, do they go around and talk to soldiers and try and make the soldiers more like humans, or is it just...
Yeah, it's not about the common white man either.
Yeah.
But you have a play about black people, and you don't mention slavery barely
it's
at all.
It's not about black people. It's that they're in the play acting.
Yeah, but playing white people, playing white slave owners.
Yeah, because that's what the founding fathers were.
Yeah, but then you're not gonna you're gonna the idea basically that you're romanticizing to an extreme degree. And
I would agree with you if they didn't bring up slavery throughout the play.
They don't, though.
As a thing.
Also,
they do.
I'm going... I don't want to listen to the whole thing, but...
I've listened to it like 10,000 times. Maybe they don't bring it up enough, but it's a prevalent theme throughout.
This is a quote from the article from the Miranda, the creator. He said there was supposed to be more stuff about slavery, but they said we don't want to have too much mentioning of slavery, because neither Jefferson or Hamilton, none of the founding fathers did anything to really stop slavery. None of them were really abolitionists, and it would just make them look bad. So let's just drop it, basically. which is pretty much straight up romanticizing them.
Yeah,
I mean-
that's a problem.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but I don't think that they completely erase it from the narrative like the article claims it does.
The guy who plays Washington, he says the Broadway audience is like being preached to, and what I was suggesting before, that the majority, the musicals in general are like a product of the 1%, where the only people who can afford to watch this play are rich white people, and you can't really be. And that's why I say it's limited to its potential in addressing these things, because you can't really cater to anyone besides the white rich audiences and make them feel good about the founding fathers.
I understand the point, but I don't think that it's catered to the level that the article implies.
I don't think so either. I mean, every time you watch a documentary or the HBO show John Adams about the founding fathers, it's not a story just about slavery. It's always mentioned that they were slave owners, but it doesn't take away the other things they did.
I think it's a fair point that it should be more focused but it just, I don't think that it's like so ignored that it's like, no, look, everyone's gonna feel so great, because like they shamed Jefferson for being a slave owner, and Jefferson doesn't look great in this play. They're not romanticizing Jefferson at all. He's a real asshole.
Well, it's because it's about
Yeah, but they also romanticize George Washington. He's a slave owner.
I know, but. And as said at the beginning, I agree with what they say about George Washington. I think that is very fair. That he is very infallible in this play.
So another moving on from this, because it's a question of like, what do you think that the play is obligated to address these things?
Yeah, and I mean, we are fucking four
Yeah.
white guys talking about this representation.
But I mean, every time you talk about anyone in history, you could be like, well, he was great, but he was racist, so whatever.
But there's always a question of whether you're stepping too far into propaganda, basically, and overgrowth.
Yeah, I understand.
because you don't want to lean so hard in the other way that you're like, look, every character in this play is a villain, and you should hate them
like
all.
obviously, if you're a rich white planter in the late 1700s or the early 1800s, you probably owned slaves. But that's like, are we going to just spend the whole play talking about that, which made them like everyone else, or are we going to talk about the extraordinary things they did?
So let's focus on what the article talks about, what Hamilton did, and they largely ignore Hamilton's politics in general, because otherwise no one would tolerate his level of elitism and his level of protectionism in his real politics. Because Hamilton wasn't elitist in real life, like he
was.
Yeah,
The whole Federalist Party was.
Yeah, and they so, which is another thing they point out in the article. Basically, if they really talk about politics, people like Obama and Pence will never fucking tolerate it, because it's like an extreme degree that we would consider like insane, like in our pro-democratic, pro-globalist world we live in today. You know what I mean?
I guess so, but a lot of his policies were also catered to these East Coast liberal elites, like he's apparently pandering to anyway. They stay away from like the tariff and protectionism shit, but like that's
that's like not a thing at all in the play.
Yeah.
The politics, and that's where I'm kind of sympathetic to your article, because when I first saw the thing that Ryan first showing about this play was Obama announcing it and saying, "Oh, I love this play; it's great." And I thought, if Obama likes it, I can't possibly like it, can I? Because like
What?
it has to be milquetoast bullshit, centrist bullshit, and largely
And
is.
that's what I was talking about at the beginning. It's not milquetoast centrist.
It is for the most
bullshit.
part. Like
it has a very clear partisan message.
The fact that Pence wants to see it and the fact that Obama loves it, I think suggests
Okay.
it's more milquetoast than you're letting on.
I think that does it water it down? Absolutely. Of course it does. It's pop culture. It's a pop culture representation of anything. Of course it's going to be watered down. But I think it's still pretty clearly the difference between like individual capitalism and a centralized government. I think it primarily only in Act 2, I think it makes a pretty clear divide between, to put it in modern terms, the Democrat and Republican Party.
But I guess that's a fair point that they actually do talk about the Federalists and the other.
Yeah, and that's the major thing that you're saying that they would stray away from. But like, there are a lot of people today who would support a lot of Federalist policy. Not all of them, obviously, but the idea that we should be focusing on industrialization and mercantilism as opposed to like, we should all be small farmers like Jefferson wants. Like, they do talk about that stuff, and I think most people watching would agree with it.
And especially given recent events, I think the idea of like a nationalized bank, which is a main theme of Act 2, is something that, you know, is relevant to today's discussion, as is isolationism versus intervening in the French Revolution, and things like that they talk about in the play that I find very relevant. And especially when you look at towards the end of the play, when you get to the election of 1800 and you have how it's more about your endorsements and rhetoric than it is actual policy, and how it's, you know, Hamilton is siding with someone who has real policy instead of just says whatever people want to hear. I think in 2016 that was a pretty relevant conversation to have. And
I guess it's just a Tea Partier in me where I see Obama likes it and I'm like, it has to be bad.
I didn't realize that you were a Tea Partier.
This is a left-wing podcast where I'm a Tea Partier.
No, but like inherently, whenever Obama likes him, like it has to be some centrist bullshit. Like, yes, like, but that's just my bias.
I mean, what do you want it to be? You want Hamilton to be like, the masses are stupid and you're all dumb and I'm gonna like.
It is, because it is a glorification of Hamilton, and
I mean, it's a Broadway musical about a fucking guy's life. What do you expect it to
I know,
be?
but there's a point that this is something that caters just to like the people in New York, Washington, and California. It's a feel-good story about the mythical economic mobility, about the poor, and the glorification about the founding fathers. I think that's a very valid.
I would also argue, though, that you could make the same argument that even though Hamilton's politics weren't right-wing, he's very much what right-wing thinks America is, where he's this immigrant that came and joined the military, and he rose from poverty through pure, you know, he picked himself up from his bootstraps and became a leading member of the government through just his own ability and through the military chain of command. I think that's pretty clearly not like a liberal jerking off point.
Well, that's why this article claims it's a shit play, because it shows the right glorifying black people, glorifying that aspect of their policies, while the left gets to mix multiculturalism with nationalism, so they get to feel good about themselves.
No, but I also think that once he rises to that power through the American dream, which, you know, is kind of what the whole country's supposedly founded on.
But it's a mythical dream. It's we have the worst economic mobility out of most Western countries.
Yeah, but because of his struggles, he spends all of Act 2 trying to nationalize and centralize the political and economic power to make that more stable. Then, you know, because he got lucky because there happened to be a revolution that he could join. And
I was going to say, it's real strange to argue this is trying to be like, I can understand why you're criticizing it for people on the right enjoying it, but Hamilton himself is for a bigger government and is against Jefferson's like state's militia. Like, you can be like, well, this is like, it's sad that this is for people on both the right and the left, but
is that sad? Or
I think it's sad. I fucking hate it.
Yeah, that's why I was going to bring up. I don't think it's sad. I think it's like, it's just...
No, it's not. And to look back at people from 200 years ago and be like, well, he's obviously a left-wing guy, so we should have to portray him this way, or he's a right-wing guy. They wouldn't have seen themselves that way anyway. You can't just say the Federalists are Democrats and the Democratic Republicans are Republicans.
I just think it's valid because of the political climate we're in, where the shit, where we basically, the article compares, compare Hamilton to the Barack Obama of musicals, where you get black people to glorify the founding fathers, just like you got Barack Obama to essentially give the same policies as Bush in a lot of ways and extend his policies and make it worse. But
I also think that that's doing a horrible disservice to things that Obama does, like speak out against police brutality and racial injustice in our justice system. That needs a black perspective to really have that conversation.
Which Bush never would have done.
And is Obama perfect? Of course not. Is Hamilton perfect? Of course not. But I think that they are pushing the conversation in a direction that is beneficial. And yes, they should do more. I agree with you, but that doesn't mean that we should shit on the stuff that they have done and not give them credit for pushing the envelope in a way that it should be.
Yeah,
pushed.
you can, if you want, you can list its criticisms. It's just that at the end of the day, it does more good things than bad, I think.
And it doesn't make it, just because it's not super leftist or right or whatever direction you want to push it, that doesn't make it centrist milquetoast bullshit.
And I do see kids wanting to know more about Hamilton and Jefferson now, like just on their own. They're like, this is interesting to me. And that's, if you want to, they will get to that deeper slavery issue, which, like Ryan said, does come up occasionally throughout the play. Maybe not enough, but like that is a central point in both of their lives in general, that if you want to learn more about Jefferson and the issue, the hypocrisy in saying that, you know, all men are created equal, but I own slaves, and how that was an issue at the Constitutional Convention and continued throughout U.S. history forever. Like getting into American history, even if it's through a more watered down version like Hamilton, is good for people who would never have cared about it before.
And I also, I think I've repeated myself a couple times, but I do still give it credit that I think it's less watered down than expected by anybody that was like, oh, there's a Broadway play about Alexander Hamilton.
I think overall, I think as a musical play, there's only so much you can expect from, and I think you're right that it's more political than you expect, especially the milquetoast shit that goes on in Broadway.
That term is just driving me crazy.
Milquetoast.
What the fuck does that mean?
It means most like it panders to everyone possible.
Yeah.
And it's spelled with like a Q, right?
Yep. MILQUE.
You never saw like self-satisfied shit like Oklahoma musicals like that everyone's just like overly. The fact that you're singing suggests you're more happy than you should be, in my opinion. But
maybe it's a musical, and that's why they're singing.
Which is all milquetoast bullshit.
The majority of songs in Hamilton aren't like super fun, feel good happiness.
I think that it has more. I hesitate to use the word edge, but when you
but I think that's fair. I think it does.
The fact that it's presented with rap too, even if it's not, you know, the hardest stuff, it's still. It's not as milquetoast as you make it, because it could just have been a boring musical about Alexander Hamilton, but they put an interesting spin.
The word of the day is milquetoast, so everyone yell. But I think overall you guys are more right than this article.
No, we're left.
Thank God.
Wait. Why do we care about what you think compared to this article? Like what you think?
Because like I said, I wanted to have your thoughts on it, and I guess we're not having a discussion. We're just going to say our thoughts and end
There is one other thing that I want to bring up about this article.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it very briefly, but we didn't discuss it. The article talks a lot about how like it's so indicative of elitist culture because only rich white people get to experience it. And I've seen a lot of people make this point, and I think that's total fucking bullshit because, like, yes, I would love to see it. That's great. But that doesn't mean I don't get to experience it. Like, I went to Barnes & Noble and bought the CD for $20. And, like, you could get it on Amazon for, like, $10. Just because you can't go to the play and, like, it's a super wait list and the tickets are so expensive and everything, there are other ways to enjoy or experience this story. And I think just saying you have to be in the Broadway play does a disservice to how strong the music is.
Well, people do it both ways. People say you can't criticize Hamilton because you haven't seen it yet, but most people haven't. Like, people do it both ways. Like that's why the article brings it up. Like saying,
yeah, no, I think both of those things are bullshit because like I haven't seen it, so I don't really know what the costume or the stage work looks like, but like I know the play pretty intricately.
It's also entirely possible the actual play is actual shit, but the tape is good.
I have thought that. I was like, if I actually ever get to go, is it going to be really boring because I don't like musicals?
Because what was it? There's, like sometimes they make a tape first, and they're like, we can make a musical out of this, like Evita, and then the actual play is garbage.
I mean, that's possible, but I doubt it.
Considering how many people still see it.
Yeah, that is a complaint that comes up all the time that I think is just, it kind of does a disservice for those of us that really appreciate music and prefer the music to the stage work. And like, I just had to complain about that. That's not really a discussion topic. I just think fuck those people.
What's up, people?
Hashtag fuck all people.
So the only other thing I wanted to bring up was Mal Fillmore's criticism of this play, which should rank up every couple of strips.
Ooh, hot take from Mallard Fillmore.
Oh boy, are we gonna end a podcast every podcast with the Mallard?
Oh
Fillmore?
my god, can we please do that?
Basically, Mal Fillmore, the cartoon about a duck, which it's right next to fucking Garfield in the actual Sunday strips. How the fuck is that possible? Like who reads Garfield and then goes to fucking Mal Fillmore?
I know even less about.
I don't think it's right next to Garfield.
It is. It fucking is in some newspapers. I've read
some.
Yeah, but that's fucking crazy. The fact that he talks about fucking how Ted Kennedy is a monster for crashing his car and killing a girl. Like
you also have Doonesbury in the comics too for a left spin.
Wait, my in-laws always hang up zits on the fridge. Is that the same? Is that what we're talking about?
No, that's the Milquetoast comics.
Oh, okay.
They
Okay,
try
that
to
makes
apply to
sense.
both left and right people.
That's why they're always complaining about like teens.
Yep.
Well, Mal Fillmore, after the Mike Pence controversy, where Mike Pence went to go
yeah.
see Hamilton, and they said, "Oh, you shouldn't be tolerant, Mr. Pence." And Trump was like, "Oh, fuck you, Hamilton."
Yeah, and
you're
everyone was like,
intolerant.
"Let's boycott this
Intolerant."
thing no one can go to."
I actually heard people
Yeah.
say that their version of what happened, what they heard, was that they all got up and said, "Fuck you, Pence! Like, get the fuck out!" And I'm like,
Yeah, they actually they tarred fed him after it, and they,
I'm like, the video is like online. You can just see it. They
Yeah.
didn't say anything mean. I mean,
that video was doctored by the Illuminati.
or afterwards
Yeah.
they said, "Fuck you."
As Alex Jones would say, the globalist doctored that video.
So, what did Mallard Fillmore say?
Basically, that he pointed out, when Hamilton was first casting, they only had a casting call for non-white actors, so they're really the real racists, not Mike
Oh, is that
Pence.
why there's
Oh,
white
yeah,
people in the
yeah.
play?
Yeah, they did have a casting call for non-white actors because most of fucking Broadway actually literally has nothing but white actors,
Yeah.
and as Ryan pointed out, they eventually rescinded that when they got.
Yeah, because King George has to be a white guy. He has to be.
Is that any different than like anything? Like every movie, they pick people that they call for people who they think would
specific
fit a
colors.
specific role. Yeah, like,
Yeah.
It's always a thing where if you have a casting call for a black person, you're denying it to white people, which has never happened to black people. You never have casting calls
Yeah.
for white people denying it to black people.
It's reverse racism, really.
We'll talk about this more in our spin-off podcast, White History Month.
So I think that's all I got about Hamilton. So
Yeah, I'm going to listen to the Hamilton mixtape and tell whoever whatever that article was to go fuck off.
So Mr. Nichols, you can fuck off.
Yeah.
and I'm sure he cares and listens.
A long-time listener.
Long time listener, first time subscriber.
This is our debut episode, so we don't know any of the fucking, like, iTunes shit, so whatever.
I'm sure we get a lot of fans of me criticizing Hamilton and people thinking, "Oh, you guys are praising Hamilton too much." So we hit the right balance, so people will be completely alienated, saying "fuck you."
I think you mean the left balance.
Oh.
New Balance.
Yeah, the left balance. So I guess do we have anything else to add?
Fuck you, slides. What I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I second that.
Daryl, fuck me.
I'd say good discussion.
Fuck you, Daryl. Daryl, you're just milk toast. You're just a milk toast piece of shit.
I'm sorry. I'm trying. Both sides are right.
So guys, I've been Sly,
I've been Ryan.
I've been Phil.
And I've been Daryl.
and we've been Oops, I Talked Politics. Oops, I ended the podcast.